Hello fellow AFOLs and welcome to Long's Bricks. Today we are taking a look at LEGO Star Wars Set 75390, Luke Skywalker X-Wing Mech. It has 195 pieces and retails for about $16. This just came out on June 1st, and like the rest of the June 1st Star Wars wave, it is exclusive to Target stores here in the US, but of course is also available at LEGO stores or lego.com. So this is another one of these Star Wars mechs. I think this one definitely has an interesting twist to it that we'll get into in a little bit, but first I'm going to take a quick look here at the box. Pretty straightforward little box, about the same size as a battle pack, but of course the box has the vertical orientation as opposed to the horizontal orientation. It includes a Luke Skywalker minifig. Now this is not the same one that came with the UCS X-Wing, so this is kind of a little bit less in terms of there's no dual molded legs or arm printing. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. But I do like the look of this. I think it's a neat little mech here and definitely very different from some of the other ones we've seen. Up here on the top of the box, you have a 1-to-1 of the Luke Skywalker minifigure. Not really much going on this side. Over here just has the same artwork from the front and not really much going on the bottom either. But if we take a look at the back, you can see he has the X-Wing mech here in the swamps of Dagobah, which is a pretty cool little bit of artwork, which I really like. And it shows off the back how it has the S-foils and the thrusters here and a little storage clip for Luke's lightsaber. Very, very cool. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll take a look at Luke's minifigure here. So here is the Luke Skywalker minifigure that is included here, and while the Captain Rex that came with the Microfighter was the one from the UCS Venator, as I mentioned previously, this is not the one from the UCS X-Wing, as that Luke had dual molded legs and some arm printing and really looks fantastic. This one's not bad. It's still a very good minifigure. You can see some nice printing here on the chest and legs, and we'll take a closer look at that. I'll remove the weapons here in a moment. You can see the helmet has some really nice printing, and he's got the face printing there with the goggles and the chin strap for the helmet, which I think looks really cool. Does have an alternate face we'll take a look at in a moment. Some really nice printing here on the back. But it is kind of sad to not at least have the arm printing. So if I remove his helmet and weapons, you can get a better look there at the printing on the chest. And it is nice, it is printed on the chest, the waist, and the legs, so that continues on and looks really sharp. Of course, he has the second face here, with it still has the chin strap, but has the raised goggles. I kind of wish that the second face was just, him completely without anything. No goggles or chin strap, so that way you could have him with the helmet, without the helmet. And it would have been nice to include a hairpiece here, so that way you could have the hairpiece with the, no goggles or chin strap face, and then have the other side for the helmet, but I understand why that didn't happen. Now, one thing I have seen a lot of people talk about is the fact that they made a keychain version of Luke from the X-Wing, the UCS X-Wing, and a lot of people have just been kind of taking that figure, popping the arms and legs off of it, and popping them onto this figure. That way you have an articulated Luke that you can still, take the helmet off, but he has the dual molded legs and the arm printing. So that is something I'm definitely interested in trying. I have a trip planned to the Lego store next month, and so I'm definitely going to pick up one of those keychains if I can and see if I can make that work out here, because it's a really nice way to kind of upgrade this Luke without having to buy the minifigure directly from the UCS X-Wing, as that probably fetches a much higher price on Bricklink at this point. But again, even if you just stick with the minifigure we have here, I still think it's a pretty good Luke X-Wing flight suit minifigure. I think it looks pretty sharp. Moving on to the X-Wing mech itself, I think it looks pretty sharp, and I really like this idea of having the mech seem like it's a transformable version of the vehicle. So that way you think of like the X-Wing kind of transforming into a mech suit. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I like this new take they've done. I'll bring in a couple of the older mechs to compare in a moment, but they were kind of more just straightforward mechs that just looked like larger versions of the characters that are piloting them, whereas this looks like the vehicle transformed into a mech suit, which I think is a really cool idea. So we have the lightsaber in this hand, we have this large gun over here in this hand. You have a nice printed tile here with the Rebel symbol for the front of the chest. Now, very basic articulation. You have these mech pieces that they've been using for a while now for the arms and legs, so they don't really have knees or elbows. They're just kind of made to be at like a 45-degree angle there. But you do have ball joints in the hips. Now, you're going to run into some blockage there with these pieces that they've put on the front of the calf muscles. I'm sorry, thigh muscles. These are your calves. Then you can also kick a little bit out to the side, but again, you have these little clips here on the side, so you're going to meet some resistance there as well. Kick decently far back. You do have ball joints here for the ankles for these little shoes that I think look pretty good. So decent range of motion there. No waist swivel of any kind. That's one solid piece. And then you have these ball joints here in the shoulder. But again, no elbow, as that's one solid piece. And then you have these three kind of finger pieces here that you can kind of move out to the side. But seeing as how both hands have something clipped in for them to hold that you really can't remove, I mean, I guess technically you could take the like lightsaber piece out, but you would have to remove this bottom piece here first and then remove this, and it's kind of annoying to do. And you'd still have this piece here, which could kind of act like a thumb, except for the fact that they've already built in a thumb looking piece up here. So it is kind of weird, and honestly I think it just looks better to make it look like it's just part of the lightsaber and just leave this in all the time. So again, it is technically removable. I mean, it's Lego, you can technically remove anything, but I just kind of leave, you know, the fingers wrapped around the saber hilt there. I don't really see any reason why they would need to articulate, but they do. So I just wanted to point that out. Of course, you can open the little cockpit area here in the chest. That just opens and closes so you can put the minifigure in there, which we'll do in a moment. Over here, this hand, very similar setup, but now it's holding the gun instead of the saber. I gotta be honest, this looks more like a movie camera to me than a gun. I totally get what they were going for with this, and they built in a little scope and everything, but they had to put the stud shooter in here because, you know, that's the effect or gimmick or, you know, toyetic part of it, which I understand, but I would have rather them just built something that looks like a better blaster than just kind of popping this stud shooter on the front here, because again, to me, this just looks more like a movie camera. But again, you can articulate the fingers if you so desire. On the back here, each one of the S-foils has an individual ball joint. So if you want to, for whatever reason, kind of move these around, or, you know, put them in the normal attack position, or even kind of like bring them back a little bit just to get them out of the way, because they can technically get in the way of the arm articulation if they're too far forward, and that can hinder movement there a little bit. So I kind of like to push them back a little bit. You can't quite bring them all the way down. Like, you can kind of have them touch. And I just realized I had this one turned around. So if you have them in the correct orientation, they don't quite touch. Like, you can't bring them all the way down. There's that sizable gap there. But you could still kind of have them in the, you know, travel mode, I guess. Now, there are some places to attach Luke's accessories. So you have two clips here on the side, and the directions tell you to go ahead and clip his blaster onto either side. So technically you could have it so that the blaster is facing forward, or if you prefer, you could clip it onto the barrel of the blaster and kind of have a normal holstered orientation for the gun, whichever you prefer. Just have to, I mean, it doesn't really get in the way of the arm too much, so shouldn't be an issue there. Now, technically, if you wanted, you could take the lightsaber and detach the blade, and then clip the hilt there on the side, which I kind of like the look of that. But what the directions tell you to do is to leave the blade attached, and then clip it here onto the back, which again, you can do. I think that looks a little weird, because if you think of it as a lightsaber, nothing should be able to grasp the blade of a lightsaber, and so that really wouldn't work if we think about it, you know, in universe logic. But that is an option if you're just looking to store the accessory. Lego does this a lot, where they have, you know, something clip onto the blade of the lightsaber. And I know it's dumb, but in my mind, I just think that doesn't make sense, because again, in universe canon, that wouldn't work. You can't grab a hold of the blade of a lightsaber. So I kind of like the look of taking the blade off and then putting the hilt clipped in here, kind of a more classic look, and where a Jedi would store his lightsaber hilt anyway. But then you have to find somewhere to put the blade piece if you're looking to store everything. Now, technically, you could put this back here like this and pretend it's part of the thrust system. I mean, we've seen like the back of the Millennium Falcon has that large blue thrust system. So you could kind of pretend it's part of that, even though these pink pieces here are meant to be the thrust system. It's up to you. It's however you want to do it. You have some options in that regard. I do like the the saber blade here. I think this piece is very cool. You can also pop this off, so if you want to pretend like, you know, he's holding the hilt and hasn't ignited the lightsaber yet, it's very easy to remove. Now, this is a really cool piece, but it does have a lot of air bubbles in it, as you can see. There's like one over here. There's one here. There's a really long one here. I wish they could have done something about that. I'm not the hugest fan of that. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but I thought it was worth noting just because they're very pronounced. You can see them a lot, and it takes away a little bit for me. Not enough. It's not a big problem or anything, but I'm not a huge fan of that. But they are there. Putting the minifigure in is very simple. You just pop this down, and then you use this little piece here to just wedge between the feet or legs. And then flip that up, and there you go. Luke is piloting his mech. I kind of wish, and I know it would have been very difficult to do because of the way these open, I wish there was something for his hands to hold on to so it looked like he was controlling it. And I don't know how they would have accomplished this, if they would have put something inside here that maybe could have clipped into his hands. That would be kind of difficult and very difficult to line up while you're opening and closing it. Or maybe just build something down here that he could pop his hands onto. I don't know. Again, I don't know how it would work, and I understand why they didn't bother with it. But that's just me personally. I kind of wish there was something there to make it look like he was actually piloting it. But he does fit in there pretty easily. And I do like the look of this. I think it's a very cool idea to have it look like his typical vehicle has transformed into a mech that he now pilots. I think that's a very cool idea. And I want to bring in some of the others. If I bring in the Boba Fett and Darth Vader mech. Now, there is a Stormtrooper one as well that I don't have yet. I'm waiting for a sale, hopefully. But you can see right away, like, if I just take Luke out of here for a moment, these two are just meant to look like larger versions of the characters that are piloting it. And I'm honestly kind of surprised Vader's doesn't have a cape. I think a cape would look really, really cool on this, and we know they can do larger capes because we've seen those larger Batman buildable figures and things like that. I think a cape for this mech would look really, really cool. But as you can see, it's just meant to look like a larger version of Vader, which isn't bad. And they have a clip here on the back, which can actually, I think they tell you to have it go the other way, to look up like this, but I kind of like the look of it better like this. But at least it grabs onto the hilt and not the blade, so I appreciate that. Very similar in terms of articulation. You know, it's the same spots, the fingers, the shoulder, the hips, and the ankle. And I do like the look of this, but if you could imagine this with some TIE Advanced parts, like maybe, you know, the big TIE Advanced wings as either wings on the back or maybe arm shields or something like that. If you could envision Boba Fett's with like part of the Slave One, maybe like the larger piece on the back or something like that, or even just like a Han Solo and Carbonite shield or something like that, I think would be really, really cool. But again, these aren't bad. I do like these. I really do. And the minifigures that come with them are absolutely fantastic. They do have the full all-out like arm printing and everything that unfortunately Luke doesn't have. But I think these are cool. I just really think this is a cool new direction to take these, because I like the idea of having it seem like the vehicle that they normally pilot has transformed. And I would have loved to have seen some TIE Advanced parts on this one, or parts of the Slave One over here on Boba Fett. I just think that would be such a cool idea. And I kind of hope that they stick with this direction. If they wanted to do like a Han or a Chewie that looks like the Falcon, something like that. You know, I mean, there's so many different iconic vehicles, and I feel like this is the direction they should be going in. These were fine, but I think this is a step up, and so I hope they continue in this direction. The other thing I wanted to point out is you can see here that Luke's blaster is almost identical to Boba Fett's. It has a little bit of brown here instead of the gray, but otherwise is almost the exact same build, which is, again, kind of a bummer because it's not that great. But I do love the fact that, you know, these each have a lightsaber, and so now we can have them, you know, battling it out with their giant mech lightsabers. I think that looks really cool. So definitely knew I had to pick up Vader when I heard that this was coming out. So these look really cool together. I think this is a pretty cool release. I love the idea of having the mech be transformed from the X-Wing, and I definitely think it's a kind of improvement from the previous Star Wars mechs that we've gotten, and I definitely hope they continue in this direction. I mean, for a little $16 build, I think it's perfectly good. The minifigure is great, comes with some great accessories. You have some pretty good articulation. I mean, sure, I would love elbows and knees, but I totally understand why they're built this way, and they're done at a 45-degree angle, which is kind of the simulated articulation you would want. So I don't mind that at all. I think the articulation that's included is pretty good. I love the lightsaber. I'm not a huge fan of this gun build. Like I said, to me it looks like a movie camera more so than a gun. I don't need the stud shooter. I know completely why it's included. Again, not really for my audience, but I wish that there was just an alternate build, or maybe I could do it on my own. Just a better looking blaster that didn't have the stud shooter piece, because I think that really detracts from what they can do. I think just kind of build it, or just leave the gun off entirely. I mean, I don't necessarily need the gun. I love the lightsaber. I think that looks really cool. I also kind of wish that they tailored the build of the blaster to that character. Like, for example, this one looks almost identical to Boba Fett's, and the blasters that Luke and Boba Fett use do not really look similar. So it would be nice if they could tailor it a little bit to the actual blaster of that character. But I love the lightsaber. Yes, it has the bubbles in the blade, and that's a bit of a bummer. But again, not a deal breaker by any means. I think this is a lot of fun. I would have loved if it was the same Luke from the UCS X-Wing. Totally understand why it's not. Not upset about it. Just kind of a wish list thing. But I think this is a really fun build. I love the look of the X-Wing mech, and definitely I hope that they continue in this direction going forward. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks so much for watching.